I remember talking to one newspaper when we finished Osh House, which is the retreat holiday villa that we did for our client in London as their weekend home. I said at the time that, we didn't want to design a Palladian villa in the landscape.
Nor a Los Angeles glass house.
Yeah, I was just thinking when we went to see your, the exhibition material, I just totally just thought, how wrong could I have been at the time? Because, you have this image of Palladian villas as this sort of beautiful thing in the landscape that's just for sort of the beauty of architecture and everything like that. But he actually developed the perfect compositions of different rooms and relationships through the use and practicality, how the patron would actually live there. And in fact, we really had to work hard to create a modern country weekend house of 6,000 square feet nature, because what would a city person do during the weekend with this vast landscape? And you had to really give everything functionality, like how do you use the landscape, what do you do with the entrance sequence, or even how do kids go around the building, how do they play around the building, how do you use the swimming pool, where do you store the logs for the fire? There was a big sort of debate about, patron or user, I suppose, of a weekend villa.
I think that in some of our projects, I've been trying to get the sense that scale and simplicity and non-clutter back into our work. It was brave, it was like, yes, a person deserves this, It doesn't have to be a 2.2, 2.3 meter ceiling because it fits. You will fit in there. It had a breathing space. And I think we have that in quite a lot of our work. Each time I've been putting that in intuitively, I've had to almost feel a bit like, I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I think you really should have this. We shouldn't feel sorry about that.
What moved me the most was his studies of the military formations, because we look at, not as deeply thought, perhaps, but we look at, some of the graphic books which sort of really inspire our architecture. And maybe sometimes there's nothing to do with each other, but something like the Osh House in Surrey that we completed 2 years ago, there's a huge kind of reference to some of these graphics and in its kind of wonkiness, and how these sort of 50s and 60s graphics have that slight idea of notion of imperfection. And for us, just finding those sort of ways of expressing imperfection was quite important.
You have layered all these influences, criteria, hard and soft, subjective and objective. And our way of working through it is just sketching and sketching and sketching until what I call the moment of grace, it just comes together. And I think going through his Palladios collections was to actually sometimes pick up where he was also really working at it. Sometimes not successful sketches, but it was the next step. And gradually he got there, And I think it's the same process.
His thoughts and his theories were copied by a lot of the other people, almost like a template. And in a way, they weren't afraid of that at the time, to create that sort of manifesto. Whereas today, I think, if you can't kind of go around copying Zaha Hadid, or you don't go around you don't do a replica of a Frank Gehry and get away with it. But actually what Palladio was interested in was much wider than that, than creating a sort of this individual iconic building, but much more about here's a thought, and here's how I put them together, And you know, I understand that he left these drawings where it's almost like an instruction of how to draw the right proportions, and I don't think we'll go that far, but I think it's this sort of idea of leaving a thought behind that could actually be useful to the next generation is very appealing.
And knowing that you are part of a layer of history.
Yes, yes.
And not saying that I have the complete answer here, but I am very conscious of being, you know, part of the heritage, you know. I suppose it's just working in this context. And I think if you're careful about what you leave as your layer, that's all you can hope for.